Okay, it looks like I'm live. I was trying to figure out my tech on this lovely Friday afternoon. Got my camera working. So I am in the StreamYard platform. So I should be able to see chats as it come. Oh, wait, there you go. Okay. So if you do have questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. To introduce myself, I am Khristen Massic, and my presentation was specifically on how to repurpose what you are already doing. So one of the things that I specialize in is helping multiple prep teachers. So if you are teaching multiple subjects, um, then this is how to use AI so that you are kind of fast tracking your planning and some of the things that you might already be doing to make your life easier. So apparently, Brittany says that the chat is not working because it's a good day. It's a good day. So I do have some questions prepared, and I don't know if it's easier. Let me if I see if I can log in to. I have questions, so maybe I'll just stick with those. And if Brittany sees any questions, she can pop them in here as well. I don't know if it's best to be in Facebook as well, but I've got some commonly asked questions, specifically when it comes to multiple prep teaching and AI. So let me get those questions for us. Okay, so the first question that comes up, which I'm going to kind of answer here, but also let you watch some of the presentations, because a question that comes up a lot is about uh, data safety and privacy. And with ChatGPT, that is not one of those places that you want to put any data. It is not one of those protected ones. I know by watching several, or I watched all of the presentations today, they did mention certain apps to use that you can use student data. So with ChatGPT, I have been using it mainly to support me and others as teachers in our planning, and not so much when it comes to giving student feedback. So that is a common question that comes up a lot. One of the reasons that I do like ChatGPT when it comes to planning and prepping is that we can use it for free right now. So I do use the free version. I still use the free version. And I want to also say that a lot of the other programs or apps that do follow FERPA, they do typically have some sort of like freestyle or some sort of like chat feature where you can still use prompts just like ChatGPT, but it does kind of have like that wall, that security wall, and that will help you um, kind of protect your privacy and your students' privacy. Okay, next question that I get is how can you use like frameworks and standards in there? And one of the things that I went over slightly, I touched on, was just kind of using prompts. I know that there is also a presentation tomorrow that goes into engineering prompts. One thing that I love when I am using AI, and I feel like we as teachers can have like an expert superpower, is if you start treating your AI tools like students, even though they're not human, but like students, then you're going to get some better results. Meaning that you've got to be really giving it like good questions, enough information that it's going to be able to give you the right or enough responses. So kind of do your research and figure out what things um, you can put in. So you can be super general and you're going to get more general answers. But if you are wanting to repurpose something that has to do with a specific standard, I would try to find as much information about that standard. How is it written? Who is it to? How explicit are we being? Are we teaching third graders versus seventh graders versus ninth graders? They all are different audiences, and using AI and letting AI know who your audience is and then specific outcomes, that is really what's going to help you the most. So you still have to do like some back work and some additional like getting information, and then you'll be able to get better responses. Okay, another question as I get is a lot of the examples that I was using, it was just, well, it depended on when you were listening, but mostly I've got the ones that I have put in have been CTE, and I've had some ask, does this work with other? And I feel like as a CTE teacher, as an elective teacher, that most of the things that when I go to PD, I feel like a lot of it has to do with your core subjects. And so what I have been loving about AI and using some of these tools is that it not only supports the core subjects, but it doesn't leave anyone else out. So you might have to work a little bit more with your prompts or work with what you're giving it, because some of the things may not be as intuitive, or other teachers may not have been using it for that particular reason. But I'm excited about AI in that it can support all of those other subject areas. And I do have, every time that I've gone and taught something like this, I've done like face-to-face presentations with large groups, with small groups. And one thing that I suggest is that you experiment with it with something that you're already familiar with. So you're kind of like testing out the AI if you're still on the fence on whether or not it is going to be valuable, or is it going to give you the output that you want. And so normally when people are in those, they're trying it out with a class that they are very familiar with. They know the standards inside and out. It's their favorite class that they've taught. And then they'll tell me afterwards that it worked for them. So I've gotten several teachers with computer science who I feel like computer science teachers sometimes are trying to like break the AI, but they also are excited to use it, but maybe a little bit hesitant on it. And so they'll tell me like, this worked for my class, this worked for this class, this worked for foods. Once again, these are all like elective classes. So I feel pretty good about if it is working for elective classes, that it works really well also for your core classes. I'm wondering, Brittany, I'm wondering if I should go into the Facebook group just to make sure that I'm not getting any questions in there. I still have more questions that I can answer as well while we wait. I don't want to have the echo. Let's just double check on this. Okay. All right. I did find some questions on here. So, all right. So Aaron was wondering, how have you found ways to get a foot in to bring this information to CTE? So as a former CTE teacher, I have specifically targeted groups of CTE teachers. And so I have gone to specific conferences. So instead of having it be like a PD for the entire faculty, it's just been that small group of CTE teachers. And I feel like with the CTE teachers, because I am one, I'm married to one, a lot of my colleagues, they need to experience it. So if you are a CTE teacher here, you got to try it out. You have to try it out. You have to experiment with it. That is the best way to get CTE teachers or elective teachers to try it, because more often than not, we attend PD and shut down. So when we're in PD, everything is like, oh, that sounds great. But it sounds great because it is going to apply really well to the core classes. But that doesn't apply to me. I taught in a shop situation, so does my husband. And sometimes when people would present about classroom management, we're like, well, that would be really nice if our students were sitting at desks all the time. So really allowing teachers to experiment with that, and then finding ways of making it so they can see how this can help make their lives easier. So another thing with elective teachers is we are also typically asked how to boost certain things like literacy. We've got to all have literacy. And that usually ends up being on the back burner because it's hard for us as CTE teachers to figure out how to do that. So finding AI tools, using prompts or things that will help us incorporate like best teaching practices is what is another way to get with CTE teachers as well as our elective teachers. And so that's one of the reasons I like to focus on repurposing like various protocols, because if you can use a protocol that works in your class and then you can tell the AI tool, these are all the different subjects that I am teaching. Please apply this protocol to architecture, to woodworking, to whatever I'm teaching. And then it kind of like does the heavy lifting for you. That's also been a really great way to tap into those teachers who teach CTE or other like multiple preps. All right. Okay, so I think that might be the only question I've got from, I just want to keep double checking. If you can leave them in the chat. Brittany's been like transferring them over to StreamYard so I can see them there. But let's go on to some of the other questions that I tend to get. I mentioned in my presentation that AIs, ChatGPT in general, may not know about different protocols. So you might have to train things. So there are some protocols, like common like discussion protocols, that the GPT, your AI, is going to already know. But I would recommend, if you are wanting it to brainstorm something the way that you do it, so if you are using Gallery Walk, but you are wanting to use Gallery Walk in a certain way, this is how you do it in your class, have that description so that when you're asking the AI to brainstorm different ways of using Gallery Walk, that you're also giving an idea of what the Gallery Walk is, so that when it gives you that response, that it actually does align. Otherwise, that's where you kind of get, I've heard it being like hallucinating, but it's pretty much making things up. The AIs, they're just trying to figure out what you were saying. So if you give it as much background information as possible, that is what's going to help you. All right, let me see some of the other questions that I get. Okay, so an implementation challenge that many teachers have, and I don't know if you're having them here because you've kind of already bought into AI, or at least you're interested in learning about it by signing up for this conference, is how much time do I need to spend on AI? Because there are ways that you can like go in like the black hole of AI. So you could just keep going down this path and keep digging and digging and digging. And then the tools that you're using may or may not be saving you time. So I like to set limits, boundaries. I know that Brittany talks a lot about it, but just setting a timer and limiting how much time I will spend on this lesson plan or this activity or what I'm doing here with AI, so that it does save time. because you can continue to refine and refine and refine and refine. And then it takes you longer than had you just come up with the original idea. The other thing that I recommend is to try it out. So you get a response if you are doing lesson planning and you think it's pretty good what it's given you and you just need to make some minor changes, go with it. Don't continue to work on that same lesson plan for an hour or 2 hours to get it perfect. Try it out. See if it's going to work. It's just like anything else we do is you're going to have to just trust yourself, trust your teacher, expert self. Know that just like our students, we have to fail in order to learn from it, in order to improve for the next time. Find out like that worked, that didn't work. And so really setting your timer, and that's the same thing, which is aside from AI. So if you're ever going online for searching for things, I would also recommend setting a timer so that you're not searching forever on Pinterest or Teachers Pay Teachers for the best lesson plan, because more likely than not, it doesn't exist. And if you are also a multiple prep teacher, more often than not, you get to teach one class and then you don't get to teach that class again until next semester. So you may or may not get to repeat it even within the school day. So just try it out, jot down some notes, and then you're going to try it again next time. And that will save you a ton of time by having to really feel like it has to be perfect. And then whatever you give the AI, I know we're educators and we want our students to produce a work, but sometimes just with our capacity, it's totally okay to produce C work and just improve and get better and learn from what we do. Okay. That might be a little bit controversial, but let's see. Another question sometimes I've gotten was about sustainability of AI. I have a recommendation being at the district level and then as a former administrator. If you're really into AI and you're exploring tools, like we know that teachers are exploring tools, I would recommend finding out at your district who might be decision makers. I know within our district, we're having a lot of conversations right now because there are so many tools, as you know, there's so many things out there. But what our district is wanting to do is kind of stay ahead, be able to adopt something. So whether we're all using or the AI tool that we're using as a school district and even our state, kind of like a generally adopted program so that we can all learn and train based on that one tool. So that instead of everyone trying a million different things, it's easier to support on a district level, which I know may not help with autonomy, but if you are really into AI and you're really into some of these tools, then I would recommend finding out who those decision makers might be so that you can voice your opinions to them. I've tried this tool, I've tried this tool, I've tried this tool, here's the pros and cons about them, or ask to be on an adoption committee. So when they send out for proposals, you are someone who is there, who gets to pilot things, who gets to give feedback. I think that will help our school districts and our schools the most, because while we have early adopters, we also will have those teachers who are still against everything AI, because it's been mentioned in several of the presentations about that AI will take our jobs. There's no way it can take our jobs. It's the same thing as going and getting trained on a curriculum and having that curriculum, and now you are an expert teacher. No, you're an expert teacher because you're good at teaching, not because this one piece of curriculum changed your life. and it's not going to take over. I feel like that's the same thing with AI. But as an early adopter, you really can have the power to guide your school, your district, your team in finding something that will be good for you, but then also that will help your students. There's definitely some pros about having your students using AI and then in all the classes. So instead of them having to learn like 12 different tools and every teacher's using them differently and this teacher's not using it at all, if we can all be using similar tools, that at least from the district standpoint and an instructional coaching standpoint and a training standpoint, we're hoping that that will help more teachers adopt the use of AI. All right. Okay, double checking. Thanks, Brittany. I see your your comments in the Facebook group. Um, so that was like long-term sustainability. The other thing I wanted to point out, um, I often get questions about like balancing this automation and teacher expertise. And I feel like Brittany hit on it a little bit in her live as well. Is I'm very pro you are the expert as a teacher and the AI is your tool. And I will say, I remember this being mentioned at least one other time, if not multiple times in today's presentations, about how it isn't, it's more of like a companion, a way to bounce ideas off of something to help you reduce the decision fatigue. It helps you get through or to a certain part instead of taking everything away. I wish it would take everything away, but it's not going to take everything away. But what it will allow you to do, and I feel like this is what it has allowed me and the teachers that I've worked with do. And I mentioned it earlier when we were talking about CTE teachers, is it's allowing us to get from teaching the way we normally taught, where we were just plug and chug to try to get through all the standards, to now I can figure out ways of incorporating more writing. I can figure out ways of speeding up my feedback, like huge, 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 giving students timely feedback. Students turn in an assignment and they can get feedback very, very quickly. And it's not just in the form of a quiz, like, yes, you got this right. No, you didn't get this right. But to actually get feedback is what is going to change the world. But then also allowing you to become a better teacher because you're not so worried about what am I going to teach today, but it's more, you can spend more time thinking about how am I going to teach this? What are the gaps? Because all of this information is data that it took us a long time. And as a multiple prep teacher and teaching different subjects, I did not have the time to to really like pay attention to all of the balls that I was juggling. But with this, I can really get a lot of those decisions, that those big ideas I don't have to worry about as much because AI is like lifting that from me, that burden from me. And then I can really get into like best teaching practices instead of really surface level content standard knowledge. All right. Okay. Got about 5 minutes left. I think I've got I think those were all the questions that I had prepared that I had gotten from my audience. I wanted to also mention, so today in my presentation, I talk a lot about repurposing your routines and your procedures. But then another thing that I've done recently is talking about and creating workshops on how to use AI to create curriculum maps. So, curriculum maps of classes that you may or may not feel qualified to teach. So, as a multiple prep elective teacher, a lot of times I was being asked to teach a new class every year, or the state standards were changing all the time. And so I had to shift gears, or just new technology was coming about. And so I had to teach a new class, like on 3D printing, when 3D printing wasn't a thing when I was going through my undergrad. So there's a workshop that I've put together that has prompts to take standards, or even at the minimum descriptions of courses, and help you put together a curriculum map which goes down to the unit plan level and helps you identify misconceptions. And it's all using various prompts so that you have a basic idea of what you're going to be doing for this next school year. So that's kind of where I'm going when it comes to using AI in planning. And that's kind of my focus, is helping plan, and especially for multiple preps when you're teaching different things and they're not all the same. But how can you save time by doing one thing for one class, but then transferring it to others? So, got once again, all of my contact information is within my presentation. If you're on the Thrivecart Learn platform, you can find all of that there. I hang out the most on social media, on Instagram in particular, and it's KHRISTENMASSIC. And I would love if you would join me over there and see some of the things that we are doing specifically with multiple prep teaching and with AI. And then you can also hang out with me every week. I have the Secondary Teacher Podcast. I was recently on Brittany's podcast this last week, so there's all information on her podcast as well. And my episodes are super short. They're about 10, maybe 12 minutes. So shorty episodes to get you motivated and keep you moving as a secondary teacher, so that you can have a life outside of school, even though you have a lot to do during school. So I would love to hang out with you. If you've got any additional questions, if you're watching this replay, make sure that you add those comments, and I will jump in the Facebook group and answer them. And I will talk to you soon.